What is up guys, Fi here, and today we're going to be looking at a guide for the new Ashe. So Ashe just got reworked, and it's actually one of the reworks that I really like. I think they've done a really good job with her, and she's really strong right now. I've been playing her a lot recently across all of my accounts. I played her on my Smurf and on my main account, and I've actually only lost one game in my last 15 ranked games with her, and she's just so good right now. So I've decided to do a proper in-depth guide. So first off, let's start with an overview, right? What is she good at and why is she strong now? To start with, her passive and Q are really good at shredding tanks and dominating a lane as well. So in this kind of tank meta where we have these big bruisers, she's really good at killing them even mid-game. Her new volley does loads of damage, and because there are more arrows in it now as well, it's actually easier to hit and easier to poke in lane. It's harder for them to dodge it behind the minion wave. She has a huge game-changing ultimate, and she always has. This is one of her biggest strengths, is that you can catch people out all the time, whether it's in lane or mid-game, and get objectives from it. She actually has a pretty good lane phase now. Her volley damage is really high, so she has good poke, and also with her auto attacks and having 600 range, it actually means you can do pretty well in lane. So the big problem with Ashe before was that she didn't really do anything mid-game. When you have an AD carry, basically mid-game is a lot of ability damage and late game is a lot of auto attack damage. Previously, Ashe didn't have any abilities that do damage, but now she has her volley, she has her Q which do a lot of damage mid-game and make her really strong. Late game she is just as ridiculous as she was before. She has 600 range, she has her kite with her slow and her volley, she has her Q which is shredding tanks really hard, and also the lifesteal which she gets from that is incredible. The way I think you should kind of think of her is she's kind of like a better version of Caitlyn and kind of a cross between Caitlyn and Jinx, and the big reason is her passive. So what is actually new with Ashe? What actually got changed? Well, the first thing and the big thing is her passive. So she's not able to crit anymore. She can't crit at all, but instead, everyone she hits, she slows, and while slowed, she does bonus damage which scales with crit. The simple way of looking at this is that when you slow someone, you will permanently do bonus damage to them instead of being able to crit. And the more crit chance you have, the more bonus damage you do. As you can see in a lot of these clips, like the first attack doesn't actually do much damage, but the ones after this are dealing the bonus damage and they deal an absolute chunk. So her Q is the other really big change, and the only part that really matters to us is the active at 5 stacks. It means that you fire off this volley with your auto attacks instead of just auto attacking once. It is absolutely crazy. You deal these short bursts and it does so much damage. Now it doesn't apply on hit, so it doesn't apply things like Blade of the Ruined King, but it does apply things like Black Cleaver and Runans because they are on attack. The big thing with this ability is that it does apply lifesteal, and that is huge. So all of this damage that you're racking up with your volley of shots actually applies lifesteal, and you'll be healing back for a huge amount. So her W is essentially the same. The volley is basically the same. It's your main damage source in lane. It's the thing you max first, and it's amazing poke, and it's also good wave clear if you angle it from the side of the minions. While it's essentially the same, they did change something so that there are now more arrows within the volley. So it's kind of easier to clear waves, it's easier to get the hit through onto the AD carry, and it's just a way better spell basically. So now moving on to her E, and her E is changed because it's now global, and it's honestly just not really that good. Like, I hardly ever actually level it, and I only really use it for scouting objectives. Okay, now this build is purely based on my experience over these 15 games that I played in the last couple of days. This isn't a number-based build, and there may be a better version, but this is what I've been using. So my core build is Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Bloodthirster, and Last Whisper. Now I take the PD because the extra crit over Static Shiv is just better with her passive, I think, and the Bloodthirster instead of Blade of the Ruined King is kind of interesting. So Blade of the Ruined King is really good at shredding tanks, right? But actually your Bloodthirster with Ashe's kit is going to shred tanks anyway. Your passive, your Q, and your W all scale with AD, meaning that the more AD you have, the more damage they do. The other thing is the Bloodthirster gives you more lifesteal, and so when you're using your Q, your volley of shots, and you're actually lifestealing back, you'll be healing for way more than if you got a Blade of the Ruined King. So one thing I do want to mention is getting a Vamp Scepter early. Now I don't do this on basically any other champion because I don't think it's worth delaying your Infinity Edge, but because of her Q and how it works with lifesteal, when you're actually fighting all in bot lane, the Vamp Scepter is really helpful for keeping yourself alive and winning those fights. So moving on to defense for Ashe, and I kind of think there are 3 options. You have your Guardian Angel and your Banshees, which is normal, but if you're never being touched and they just have burst damage like a LeBlanc or Ahri, Hex Drinker is actually really good. Hex Drinker is going to give you more AD, which means that your passive, your Q, your W will deal more damage, but it also gives you the shield, which is able to let you survive the burst damage of those champions. The reason it especially works with Ashe so well is that once they've actually used their burst, you will survive it with the shield, and you can just lifesteal everything back up with your Q, which is gonna mean that you kill them before their next rotation of spells. Okay, so let's move on to some tips and tricks, and these are going to be the things that really help you take that Ashe game to the next level. Alright, so the first two are going to be your ultimate. These are kind of obvious, but the first one is going to be using your ultimate to get other lanes kills. The most common way you're going to do this is just ultimate straight down the mid lane. Because it's a straight line from the base, you have a relatively good chance of actually hitting the enemy mid laner, which is going to give your mid laner 2 or 3 seconds of them being stunned and probably able to kill them. The other way is just your ultimate catching people out all the time. Just a few examples, like in lane phase, okay, if the enemy support goes to ward and their AD gets greedy for a CS, just instantly ult them and both of you run at him, he's stunned, you can probably pick up a kill, and if not, at least you're going to get his summoners. Mid game this is really good as well. You can just spam ping, say you're going to try arrow in chat, and just try and use your ultimate to get picks all the time. Like if you ever see someone in another lane, then just try and engage a fight with your arrow and you'll be getting these picks and objectives so often. So earlier I said that you're kind of like a better version of Caitlyn, right? And a big reason for this is because you have 600 range and you have your passive, which makes trading autos in lane really, really good. So for example, something that I've been doing a lot of the time is just volleying people and then auto attacking because you're going to get the crit. Like volley applies your passive, which means that the next auto attack is going to be doing this bonus damage. Because you have this 600 range, it's really not difficult for you to get these auto attacks in, and they really do add up, especially early, which can lead to you getting a couple of kills or at least lane dominance, which is a really big thing for Ashe. So while some of those things are kind of obvious and there are only a few tips, those are the things that I've been using to actually win my games. Like those are the things I focus on and those are the things I try and do, and they've been serving me really well. So let's move on to what actually beats her, because she's not all amazing and she does have some really big weaknesses. So the first one is kind of like Jinx without the passive, right? She doesn't get the reset and she's not safe with that passive, meaning that if they have any kind of hard engage, if you get camped, they have crowd control, they have dive, or they have huge burst, you are pretty much screwed. So in the one game I did lose on Ashe, it was because in team fights they had an Irelia, they had a Vlad, and they just both ran at me and killed me before I could do anything. And that is Ashe's biggest problem. Like her team does have to kind of defend you a little bit because you can't do everything yourself. The other problem that Ashe does have is she kind of has a wind up, pretty much like Jinx does. You know, the first auto attack with her Q will apply some attack speed and then you get quicker and quicker as you attack more. Now Ashe kind of has a similar thing, and while she's not ramping up her attack speed, she needs those 5 stacks of her Q to activate it and do the volleys, which is the biggest thing that is going to help you survive in team fights because it gives you lifesteal and it does shred them really hard. A good tip to getting around this is to remember that it's not just auto attacks that give you these stacks on your Q, it's whenever you slow an enemy. So if you volley into a crowd of people and you do hit all 5, then you'll instantly get your 5 stacks you need to activate your Q. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That was a pretty in-depth guide to Ashe, and I want to be doing more of these, I think, but it depends how much you enjoy these, whether you prefer the in-depth ones or whether you prefer the kind of 3-minute shorter guides. But anyway, remember to check out the May giveaway that's still going on at my Patreon, and I'll catch you in my next video.